A frustrated California landlord recently left the rental property business due to too much regulation. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of California. Now, obviously, California is one of those places where they hate landlords. They treat us like we are the biggest villains on the planet. And the truth is that the majority of us are good people who are just providing a service that is needed, okay? And we are getting caught up in, just this whole huge group of hatred for people like us, right? They have the false impression that we are these super greedy, super wealthy bad guys. And I sit here and I bring these stories to you because I want to dispel those myths, okay? I want to bring the truth to you about what the majority of landlords really are, how we're honest, we treat our tenants with respect, and we're running our businesses with ethics and integrity. So, I hate the fact that we get, just slighted and made to look like we are awful people. But, that's why I have this channel. I bring you the true stories of landlords like the one in this article I'm about to read. So this landlord, they got sick of it. They got sick of California. They got sick of all the new rules and regulations, all the proposals, all the punishment that they are putting on to landlords. And this is a small landlord. And by small landlord, I mean that, they only owned a couple of smaller apartment buildings, but they got caught up in the same regulations that they put all these humongous landlords through. That's why I say we have to fight these regulations. Yeah, they say, oh, well, we're only targeting, the big greedy landlords, right? But then you realize that, hey, the small landlords are getting caught up in this nonsense as well. We have to follow the exact same rules, and we're getting punished in the exact same way. And that is why, these people here, they just decided to sell and get out of the business. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, okay? Do you think there's a war on landlords in the state of California? Do you think that a small mom and pop landlord should even waste their time trying to stay in business in the state, or that they should, cash out, leave the business or leave the state and invest somewhere else, or, just get out of real estate investing altogether? I know that there are still great opportunities in the state. I don't want to, paint the image of, hey, it's all negative. Okay, there are great opportunities for appreciation there if you know how to play the game and the rules and the regulations. Maybe you can make a lot of money, more than I can make here investing in the Midwest. I've never denied that, right? But remember, the reason I say what I do say is because I don't like headaches. I don't like the fact that I have to have, lawyers, and, I have to have all, fight the tenants just for a rent raise, and, wait months on end for evictions, and go through all this nonsense with a constantly changing set of rules within every little jurisdiction that you're in. I don't like that. Okay, I want to be able to operate my business and, just go about my day, collect my rent checks and do my repairs, and, my tenants have a nice place to live, and that's it. Okay, I don't want to have to worry about, the government coming up and saying, well, now you've got to put, $50,000 worth of solar panels on your roof. Now, listen, I don't have the money for that. I don't have the time. It's ridiculous, right? But that's what they're doing to landlords in California. So let's get into the article. And this is a really good article written by a person who was a landlord for a very long time. And it goes over their specific story. And this is something that, I like reading it because it tells the truth about a place like California. So let's get into it. This article is coming from timesofsandiego.com, and it says, opinion, hardworking mom and pop landlords give up on apartments. And this is coming specifically from a person who was a landlord of smaller apartment buildings. So by that, I mean apartment buildings that are more than 4 units, right? But, probably still less than like 20 units. So you could own a 5-unit building and still be categorized as a big landlord, according to like the state of California. So let's get into the article. My husband and I bought and sold small apartment buildings for more than 47 years. Recently, we sold our last 2 apartment buildings. We are done with owning and managing multifamily housing. It's bittersweet for us. I loved being a hands-on owner. I loved improving the properties to make them a more desirable place to live. Our tenants were our priority. What was needed at the buildings took precedence over what was needed in our home. In our last 2 buildings, we worked to build a sense of community. We hosted off-site tenant appreciation parties for our residents, movie nights, and published regular newsletters. We had wedding receptions in our courtyard. Tenants became engaged and married while living in our properties. 2 individuals met in our building and recently tied the knot in our courtyard. In my heart, I celebrated these wonderful occasions. Our residents became my apartment family, and I was the apartment mama. And this is a story of a lot of landlords, okay? When you're self-managing your tenants, a lot of people, they become personally involved with their tenants. They know their names. They, know the, things about them. They give them gifts at Christmas time. A lot of landlords do this stuff, okay? When I was self-managing my single-family rentals here in Omaha, I did give gifts to my tenants, and I did do nice things for them. They had my personal phone number, and they could call and, talk to me, and, they would let me know, hey, I'm going through this, my wife is in the hospital or whatever, right? And I could work those things out. And that's a nice way to run a business for a lot of people, right? And unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to give my tenants the kind of attention they needed, which is part of the reason why I switched over to property management, right? But in this case, this landlord, you can tell she just really cared about keeping her property nice and taking good care of her tenants, right? And that's what most landlords are doing. For me, owning and managing apartments was not a business. It was a way of providing housing with value-added benefits for our residents. We issued modest rent increases every 2 or 3 years, and yes, all our apartments were under market rate. However, over the past few years, in the eyes of some, owning apartments became synonymous with being a greedy landlord. Local, state, and federal legislators felt they needed to protect vulnerable tenants from their onerous landlords. Some of the more egregious pieces of legislation did not pass. And now she's going to go over some of the stuff that, they have proposed in California. And this stuff is crazy. And this is the same stuff that I cover in my videos. It's really quite interesting. One would require owners who plan to sell their building to first offer it to their tenants and nonprofits and allow 1 year for them to find financing. Yeah, and that's tenant right to purchase stuff, right? Which I have covered in a video. Owners of 5 or more rental units would be required to provide specific information into a state registry requiring an abundance of private information, invading the privacy of tenants and at significant cost to owners, and to what end? And that's, tenant rental registration stuff, right? Where you have to enter all of your tenants' information for all the tenants in your units into a state database. And I've covered that as well. Owners would need to disregard the criminal backgrounds of any tenants. Yeah, and that is, where, basically some of these cities and localities have decided, hey, it's wrong to look at the criminal backgrounds of your tenants, even if the tenant, is still a criminal and could terrorize your other tenants, and I've covered this is, all the stuff I'm talking about is what she is talking about right here. The state proposed to regulate the kind of outdoor LED lighting fixtures utilized on apartments to reduce light pollution, and any building with a dwelling unit would be required to provide cooling or it will be deemed substandard. Yeah, I've never covered that lighting issue, but that's a pretty California specific thing. But I have covered the whole topic of how they're trying to require landlords to provide air conditioning. And like I've said, that should be left up to the individual landlord, and the grand majority of landlords are already providing air conditioning. There's no reason for this sort of law. Many legislative proposals at all levels of government did pass, and below are merely some examples. And now she's going to go through stuff that did pass and that she does have to comply with, right? I'll go through this a little bit quicker so you can get the point. Rent control was first. During COVID, with job losses, owners were mandated to find out which tenants couldn't pay their rent and needed rent forgiveness or special arrangements for repayment. For tenants who qualified for assistance, a labyrinth of governmental bureaucracies awaited owners who had to go through the process or not see the rents they were owed. Confusing and conflicting laws from local jurisdictions, as well as the state and federal level, prohibited the eviction of any tenant, even when they were a danger to neighbors. Apartment buildings meeting specified criteria were required to install new fire alarms, an unfunded mandate costing us over $35,000 for just one small property. More local inspections of our buildings by the fire department were instituted at a cost to the owners. At the local level, our residents had their nearby street parking virtually eliminated, and balcony and deck inspection deadlines are rapidly approaching, and now costly conversion from gas to electric is on the horizon. So yeah, they implemented all this stuff, and she just brought it up, right? And every one of these things has a huge and significant cost to landlords throughout the entire state or within the jurisdiction where she's operating. So yeah, like this fire alarm rule, where they basically mandated that certain types of fire alarms for the buildings, and you have to spend $35,000 for one building. Well, how are we supposed to recuperate the cost of this mandate that you put onto the landlord when you have rent control in place? Okay, you can't recuperate those costs, okay? So it basically makes it so that the landlords are in a losing position. It's like the state government is working against you, and now they've got all this stuff, for climate change, where they're like, no, you can't have natural gas in your building anymore. Oh no, you got to install solar panels. You got to do all this nonsense, right? And the end result is that it makes it so that landlords can't make any money. So what are we going to do, right? We're going to sell our buildings, and probably the next person who buys them, they are going to convert it over to condos and then sell those condos individually, and then the building won't be under rent control anymore, and they will be able to cash out. And what this leads to is a huge decline in the affordable housing that the state claims that it needs and wants. So, it doesn't benefit anyone when a good landlord like this gets forced out of the business. And, I don't really feel sorry for the state. And I would have told this lady a long time ago, hey, this just isn't worth it, I know that you don't see this as a business, but it really is. And they're treating you like garbage there, and you deserve better. We felt we had lost control of our properties. We lost the ability to provide certainty for our renters. What was next? By now, we had been retired from our full-time jobs for several years. We were just small mom-and-pop operation. We had hoped that owning an apartment building would help us to build a little nest egg to help us through our retirement years, and maybe even enable us to retire a little earlier. However, with the rents we charged and the expenses we paid, retiring early was just a pipe dream. How many other responsible apartment owners have decided to call it quits under the burden of unfunded and unreasonable government mandates? And who will be left? And that's the question, okay? Who's going to be left? You're going to have the large corporate landlords, right? I mean, they're obviously, very efficient. They know how to operate their business, but they don't put that kind of personal touch on that these small mom and pop landlords do, okay? And they don't decline to raise the rent every opportunity possible that they can, okay? So that's part of who's going to be left. Then we're talking about the people who, if you own single family rentals, a lot of those people are selling to owner occupants. A lot of the people who own multifamily are going to condo conversion. So these buildings are just going, and there's nothing that can be done about it, because right now the web of laws and regulations and rules within California is so thick that you'll never get rid of it. So that's why I say, it's time to abandon ship. If you're a small mom and pop landlord and you are overwhelmed with all of this stuff, I just don't think it's worth it. You can disagree with me. I don't mind. I understand that my perspective is more from, I like the peace of mind of knowing that I can actually remove my tenants. I can actually set my rents to what I want them to, and I don't have to jump through 1,000 new hoops every day when they come up with a new law to pick on me.